walk around a little bit.
And when I get it together. Stomach is a little wonky,
Yeah.
but it tries to adjust as far as eating. It tries to adjust during the week, and then tries to adjust night. It looks like.
How many hours do you work a week?
I do the 3-day, 12-hour shifts.
Gotcha.
So it's like, ugh. But I want to get back into the day life. I'm not liking the nightlife anymore.
Gotcha.
I like my client. I like, I got no problem with that. I want to work in the daytime.
Okay, I'll be back in a minute.
I used to work, like the 12-hour shift with the same client, 8 to 8 in the morning, 8 in the morning to 8 p.m. and then another client was 8 to 6. And they were all
You want your hair done? Yeah. My friend, thank you. My friend, she's a cosmetology student, so she goes, "Hey, you're coming over and I'm doing your hair." I
nice.
said,
Oh,
"Okay."
wait. I would want the morning time.
So it was
Morning,
only
girl.
9-hour
Morning.
process.
Really?
Yes, because we had to take all the dye out from the red on
Uh-huh.
the bottom. That's what most of the time was.
It looks good though. I
Looks
like it.
good.
Yeah.
It does.
I'm an old lady. I can't pull that off. So I like
You work?
Mhm.
Are you tired?
that's cute though.
Me too. Yeah. I gotta get woke up on that.
She just got out of work, so she's exhausted. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Oh, geez.
That's the world. Good.
Oh, boy, I'm gonna use this opportunity.
There you go.
Are you staying with them?
I'm staying till 2:45. We can stay till. She's going to sleep probably.
I've got one.
And Wednesday I stay till whenever.
Yeah, I'm staying Wednesday, but not, I can't today. I gotta go to sleep.
I need more sleep.
Hot here, is it me?
That's fine.
It's warm.
The humidity today is like 83%.
Jeez. Plus I have no air in my car, so that
Oh, seriously? How long's that been?
about a year.
I just got mine fixed. I had it fixed and then, it went to crap after the winter. I paid the guy to fix it
And it broke again.
and it went to crap just the way it was before.
You bring it back to the same guy, but like, you need to fix this.
So I just got it fixed again, so we'll see how long that holds in. Cause it's just too hot. You gotta have
Yes.
air.
Super.
Boys,
With leather seats, I'm like, what?
Oh, God. Oh,
what
God.
are you doing? You browse over there?
Yeah, and I have like a plug-in fan.
Fan.
Huh?
Yeah. No, I just got mine fixed. Not like a
It's too
week and a
expensive
half
to
ago,
fix.
2 weeks ago.
Crazy expensive.
I gotta get mine off. They had an incident on the Veterans Expressway. Some object just came out of nowhere and it like went underneath my car. Shredded my back tire
Oh my god,
and then ripped off part of my bumper.
that's crazy.
Good.
I was freaking out, but.
Anybody would, what the heck did I?
Why not? Because I was like in the left lane and there were cars in this lane. And I couldn't get over immediately and there's cars behind me and I'm gonna start slowing down because I could see stuff flying off my car in my rearview mirror and I'm like, what the heck happened? And I knew something hit the tire, like, because I could feel the change.
Oh, yeah.
So I finally got over, pulled over on the side of the road and got out and it was just like, there were wires coming out of the tire.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
jeez.
It had shredded a piece off of the back and wound up having to get it towed and it wasn't the tire at all. They said it wasn't the tire. Something hit it and
Oh, my God.
it like all the way underneath my car and then to the back tire and then shredded I don't know if the tire, like whenever the tire busted, like the wires might have gotten caught on the back bumper and then just I don't know how it happened, but
That's insane.
it freaked me out. And then the highway patrol was like, you could have flipped this car.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, thanks.
Well, shit.
Yeah, I was like, thanks a lot for the information.
Thanks for the heads up.
I was already like crying and freaking out and, but
Crazy. I can't believe we have 1 day left after that.
yeah,
Where
right.
did that go? Well,
She said today was gonna be like short, lecturing and then practice.
because we have to learn the range of motion for knee and ankle and all that stuff. Catheter bag.
Yeah, the drain, yeah, I already might do that, but doing a measure, I gotta do that.
I gotta pay for my test. Didn't do that yet. Just
I
got
I
paid.
get paid next week. All the paycheck goes to bills, so I'm like, that.
And I don't wanna bump it too much, cause I'm like, I really don't. Cause they'll
Yeah.
put me out. They'll put me out. I already have anxiety.
Me too. I'm
So
like,
I'm like,
oh my
I need to
God,
get this done.
I'm gonna get the whole part down and then the skills section, I'm gonna be so nervous and in the head. Just gonna be like,
Well, I was doing a video on when we were practicing. That skill on Wednesday. I noticed that there was 3 things on this. I was like, oh crap. So I didn't do too bad, but I thought, thanks, so I wrote it down so I could just study it, make sure that I remember.
I just wanna change it back with somebody in it.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Only cause. I do.
Yeah, I want to try to do that too.
I think I'm just nervous because one of my friends failed this class. If she wouldn't have, if she wouldn't have told me, I would have been fine. But she told me because I failed it. I'm like, on range of motion, which I'm like, range of motion, you fail. That's the way I think. Maybe,
Maybe it's because she did the wrong
she
thing.
did it online. She didn't come. She didn't do it in person. So it's. I think because she
and
didn't.
then when she got to the test, she.
Maybe. She said she had range of motion, pericare, and hand washing.
Are we supposed to simulate that or just one that's all?
So the first time, we're gonna actually wash our hands, and then after that, they can tell us.
Yes. Yeah, she failed range of motion. I was like,
Where did she test them? She tested
Tampa.
on Tampa.
and I said, so you did all 3 and you failed one of them, so you failed all of it? And she goes, well, she passed the written, and then she passed the other 2, but she failed the range of motion and failed that. I was like, you should have told me. I was fine until you told me. I was fine until she told me, so. It's got me all obsessed when I'm studying. I'm like obsessed with like memorizing it because she did that.
Like, I'm so used to doing things already in a certain way, just because, you know, more in eight.
Right.
And it's gonna be like, get that out of my head for the test, and
Well, that's the problem, is got so used to doing it,
you get so used to doing it, it's like muscle memory.
because I've been doing it for 12 years, yeah. So now it's like, get this, don't do it this way. You gotta do it the right way, the way they want it. Yeah.
I wasn't gonna talk the whole time. Talk it out. It helps me remember it.
You were funny, though. Like, it's water pipe? Whatever you were saying. What's your hurt? And you were like,
So it works.
I had to talk to the mannequin.
It worked.
I had to remember. I had to talk to Miss Jones.
it's okay.
That's what I'm gonna do in the room too. Maybe I'll entertain the evaluator.
There you go.
That's right.
I'm gonna go out.
You have an extra pen.
I got one buried in here somewhere. Thank you.
Happy Monday. This is our last week, guys. Next Monday, you will not be here with me. Yeah, yeah. Some of us are looking forward to not being here. But I will miss you all. You've been a fantastic class. All right, so let's get your scores. This is going to be for 8 and 9. 8 was on nutrition. 9 was on rehabilitation. Does anybody have any questions about 8 and 9? Any questions?
I like learning about the different diets.
Okay, good. Good. Do we understand why diets are important?
It's been a long night. Clients in the process of moving, so it was an extended. I had to clear all counters and put everything back, move this, move that, hide everything, and then bring it off.
Oh,
So, sorry,
a lot of work.
I'm awake. No, you're good.
You're fine. I know it's hard to come straight from work to class. I mean, that's, and you persevered. So hats off to you. Very,
Determination.
very good dedication. Yes. Yes. All right. Let me go ahead and get your scores for 8 and 9. Jillian, Shaylin, Tara.
200.
Very good. Bernice.
Sorry, I crashed and burned. I got one, and I didn't get the other.
Okay. So how did you do on 8?
I missed 2 on 8,
Okay.
but I will get the other done.
No worries. I understand. Gianna. Thank you. Bailey. Stephanie. Thank you. Melanie. Thank you. Jessica. Cynthia. JC. Rachel. All right. My diehards. Isn't it funny? I mean, we started the class with 14 people. but because, and it's so funny because I have people call me all the time, right? And ask about the classes. So they'll say, I want to take a CNA class, what do you have? So I tell them about the classroom program. I tell them about this. And then I say, we also have an online course and we live stream our classroom right into the online. Oh, no. I can't, I have to come to class. I can't learn online. And since I started doing this, which it hasn't been about 9 months now, I start out with a great big group of people, but by the time we get to the last week, I'm down to just like half, because they start to realize that, oh my gosh, I really can learn this by staying at home, right? Because I'm live streaming right into their living room or wherever they are, but they also have the online program to help with breaking the information down into small pieces, interactive elements, being able to practice virtually. So there's a whole lot there for them. But it's so funny because I start out really big and then it whittles its way down to the diehards. So congratulations to you guys for persevering. All right. So only one class left, guys. Only one class left. Wednesday, we're going to graduate. I need you to bring your yellow books back. Make sure that you bring those back. I'll give you a graduation folder. We're going to take a class photo. If you don't want to be in the photo, don't line up when I tell you to, I don't tag anybody. I do put it on Facebook, but I don't tag anybody. I just let you find it and tag yourself or share it or whatever you want to do. But our Facebook page is for your CNA medical training. So you may want to look that up and friend it or like the page so that when I post the photo, it'll show up on your feed. Okay. Tuesday, tomorrow at 11 a.m., we're doing the game show. So this is really good timing for you guys because it's right at the end of your class. So you'll probably want to tune in for this. I'm going to go over 15 sample test questions. So they're not the actual test questions, but they're very similar. And you can kind of see how you would perform if it were the test. Okay. So we're going to get into today's lessons. Now, I'm hoping to only be talking for about an hour, hour and a half. We'll see how we do on time. And then the rest of the time will be practice. I do apologize, guys. I did not get back down here at all this weekend. So I did not do the linens. I know the linens are still here. I have some in the back that I can pull. So you guys will have stuff to practice with. But you won't have quite as much as I had planned because I just did not get back down here this weekend. Kind of a crazy weekend for me. All right, so page 57 in your skills book. How do we know what to do with each patient? All right, so you tired of me saying that yet? So for the state exam, what's first thing you're going to do? Yeah, absolutely. That tells us what we need to know. So if you're not looking at that care plan, then you're just making stuff up for that patient, and that's not going to do well on your score. So this care plan tells us to provide the following range of motion exercise to the resident's right hip, knee, and ankle. So make sure that you're on the correct side of the patient. If it says the patient's right, remember that your right and left and the patient's right and left are opposite when you're looking at them. So the exercise we're going to do is flexion extension. We have to provide 3 repetitions of each exercise, and the resident is not able to help with the exercises. So we're going to do all the work. That's what makes it passive. So if you look at the title, it says perform passive range of motion. Active range of motion is if I tell the patient what to do, watch them do it, and then critique them so that they are doing it correctly. Like, lift your arm a little bit higher or straighten your elbow or, whatever I need to do to make sure that they're doing it correctly. But this one, the patient can't do. We're doing it for them. That makes it passive. So let's talk about review. So flexion extension is an up-down motion. Abduction, adduction is a side-to-side motion, and rotation is an around motion. So this care plan just told us to do flexion extension. So this is the only one that we're doing, up, down. We're going to do up, down of the hip, knee, and up, down of the ankle. Now, remember that our care plan, especially for range of motion, is going to tell us which body part, what exercises, and how many repetitions. You need those 3 pieces of information to be successful. So you need 3 things from the care plan here. And a lot of people, they'll get 1 or 2, but they kind of miss that 3rd one. So remember, you need to know which body part, which exercises, and how many repetitions. For the test, it will be 3, but out there in a clinical setting, it's going to be something different. It's usually 3 sets of 5 or 2 sets of 10 or something like that. You need that information. Hip, however, is a 2-for-1 exercise. Hip is unique. We don't do straight leg raises. Now, remember I said our body's hardwired, right? So we have physical nerves that connect your big toe to your brain. It's an actual line called a nerve. Well, that nerve goes from my brain down my back, and it gets to my lower back, and it splits off into 2, runs down each one of my legs to my feet. They're we don't want a lot of play in them, right? We want them kind of tight so they stay in place. Well, if you've got a patient laying down in bed, like this person, and I lift the leg straight up, okay? So if I've got a patient laying down here and I lift the leg straight up, what that does, that nerve that's running along the back end of the patient and down the leg, remember, it's already snug, tight. When we do this, it pulls on that nerve, and that can cause pain, particularly sciatica, if you've ever heard that term, because it irritates that sciatic nerve. There's just not enough play there to do this. Now, if you ever took gymnastics or cheerleading or something like that, this is a very common exercise and stretch that we do. You can't do it really well on day 1. You have to work your way up to it and build and build and build and build to be able to stretch that area effectively without a lot of pain. Does that make sense? Our patients haven't built up. So straight leg raises are not a good idea. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? So we don't do straight leg raises to exercise the hip. Instead, we're going to bend the knee. So if we bend the knee toward the chest, it bends that hip. And it also bends the knee. But it relieves the pressure on that sciatic nerve. It doesn't make it hurt. Does that make sense? So when we're exercising the hip, we're going to exercise the knee at the same time. So it's a 2-for-1 exercise. One exercise, both joints. Good? No worries. Shaylin, how did you do on 8 and 9? I just start to learn your guys' names and you leave me. And then I end up with a whole new group and I got to try again. And my brain is getting older.
For 8, I got a 90 and 9 I hit the chest.
Okay, no worries. No worries at all. All right. So everybody understand how the hip and knee are done together? Okay. The ankle, when we are going to exercise the ankle, remember this is up, down. So we're just going to bend the foot forward and back to the head, up, down. Kind of like they're stepping on a gas pedal. But you don't want the heel to scrape against the sheets as you're exercising it. So we're going to lift that leg, that lower leg off the bed just a little bit. Doesn't have to be like, up in the air, just a little bit. So I'm going to put my hand under that ankle to support it as I flex and extend that ankle so it doesn't scrape along the sheets. Okay, good. So we want to make sure that heel is not on the bed. So here are our testing checkpoints for this skill. We want to support the extremity near the joints. We're going to lift from below with a flat palm. We're going to move smoothly and slowly. So you always want to return to start too. It has to be a full range of motion. So if this is a live patient skill, but let me just show you on this individual. If I'm going to do hip knee flexion extension on her and I lift from below, so I'm going to support at the heel or at the ankle and under the knee, and I'm going to go up. If I just do this, this is not a range of motion. I have to go up and all the way back to start. Up, all the way back to start. Okay, good. All right. Remember, flexion extension is up, down, abduction, adduction is side to side, rotation is around, and we're going to ask about pain. Now, this, how do I put this? This care plan only tells us to do flexion extension. If the care plan asked us to do other exercises, we have to know how to do them. So adduction would be moving the leg out to the side in a sweeping motion like a snow angel. I know we don't do that in Florida, right? People look at me like snow angel, sand angel. Okay, so if you're laying on the beach and you bring your arms like this and you open your legs like this and make an angel outline in the sand, that motion, that opening and closing motion of your legs is the abduction adduction motion. Okay, that can be very painful for individuals that have a hip issue. That abductor muscle is often affected in the elderly. So don't do abduction adduction unless the care plan specifically tells you to. Good. Now, if we're trying to build up that muscle, physical therapy may recommend some exercises done routinely to help build that muscle and help stabilize that hip. Now, rotation of the leg is in a round motion, but we're not going to pick the leg up and do something like this. Okay, that's not what I know your foot. That's not what we're looking for here. Now, I actually can't do rotation on her because she's plastic and she doesn't move effectively. But rotation on the leg is a rolling motion. So you would put your hands on the outside of the thigh and the calf, and you would roll a little bit toward the inside and then roll a little bit to the outside. So what it would effectively look like, okay? Anybody ever done the twist, right? So you put your foot out, you twist in, twist out, twist in, twist out, twist in, twist out. That's the motion that we're doing for rotation. Okay, so that's how we do those exercises. The care plan for the test won't have you do them. It's flexion extension only, but you do need to know how to do those exercises in case you need to in the future. Okay. The human body is pretty cool. It can move in a lot of different directions. So your care plan, the physical therapist may recommend a lot of different types of exercises. Anything beyond these, they'll teach you how to do on that patient. Okay. Remember that your education just starts here. It doesn't end here. You're going to learn additional things out there depending on what your patient needs from you. Good? Questions? All right. So let me get somebody over there in that bed, and I will show you this skill. So somebody, anybody. I can show you the video if you want.
Oh, you can I did range of motion on the arm last time. Come on, guys.
I think I'm coming down with a cold.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, I will simulate hand washing for the sake of time for this particular skill. Now, when you're doing this before the test, your patient is fully dressed. They're going to be laying on top of the sheet. So because they're fully dressed and they're not uncovered, because they're laying on top of the sheet, we don't need a privacy blanket. Because remember, you need a privacy blanket if they're uncovered or undressed. This patient doesn't meet that criteria. If you want to use a privacy blanket, knock yourself out. It's not graded one way or another. Okay. You want to use it, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm not going to use it because it's just a whole nother step that I don't need. Okay. Yeah, it is. It's wasting time. All right. So here we go. I will simulate hand washing though for time. Here we go. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Fantastic. I need to do some exercises on your right leg. Is that okay? Okay, I'm going to close your curtain. Let me go wash my hands, get my supplies. I'll be right back. I have clean hands. This is her right side. So, Ms. Jones, I'm going to do all the work here. All you have to do is let me know if there's any pain or discomfort as we do this, and just relax. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is bend your knee to your chest and back down to the bed like you're climbing stairs. We're going to do this 3 times. Let me know if there's any pain. So under the knee, under the heel, we're going to go up and all the way back to the bed. That's 1. Okay. Feel all right? Okay. Another one. All the way up and all the way back down. Notice I'm moving slowly and smoothly. 1 more. All the way up and all the way back down. Feel okay? Any pain? Okay. So now we're going to move on to the foot. I'm going to lift the foot off the bed and we're going to flex the foot forward and back to the head like she's stepping on a gas pedal. So I'm just going to lift gently from below, just enough to get that heel off the bed. It doesn't have to be way up here, just enough to get the foot off the bed. We're going to flex forward and then back to the head. Feel okay? Forward. Feel that stretch. Any pain? Forward and back. Feel okay? All right. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? Would you like a magazine before I go? All right, here's your call light. If you need anything at all, just press that red button. I'll be happy to come back and help, okay? My environment is clean. I've washed my hands, thought about the steps of my skill. I probably would review that care plan 1 more time before the end of the skill, make any corrections. My skill is done. Thank you. All right. Oh, thank you, Bailey. And Patricia. Okay, let me get your scores here. All right, Amber, we'll wait for you. Bailey is 95. Patricia is 95. Patricia, no, the yellow book really for the written test is not. Patricia just asked, is it more helpful to study the yellow book for the written test? No, you want to get my ebook for the written test. You also want to attend the practice test game show tomorrow too, where I'm going to talk about testing strategies and things for the written test. So what's that? It is. It's on YouTube. If you've liked our channel and, subscribed and rang that bell thing, it'll notify you when we go live. So all you have to do is press 1 button and you join. So that's the easiest way. That way it comes straight to you. If you just like it, I think YouTube sends you an email, letting you know that we're live. But if you ring that bell, they notify you through the YouTube app. But no, the yellow book is just kind of basic general information that you need to know. You'll need that information in order to be able to answer the questions, but it's not really going to help you with the questions themselves. Nobody's going to ask you what is a disease of the circulatory system. They're not going to ask you that, which of the following is a disease of the nervous system. Yeah, they don't ask you medical terminology. What does ADLs mean? But they will use that term in a question. if you don't know the term, it's hard to answer the question. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you, what does ADLs mean? It may ask you, as a CNA, you understand that you will be performing ADLs on patients that need assistance. Which of the following is something the CNA should be prepared to assist the patient with? Okay, so you know it's an ADL, right? So bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting, all the stuff we do for ourselves. So A, assisting the patient with medications. B, assisting the patient with feeding. C, assisting the patient with routine catheterizations. Or D, I don't know, helping the patient to therapy, right? The only one of those that was an ADL is feeding. Does that make sense? So they're not going to ask you what is an ADL, but if you don't know what an ADL is, you might pick the wrong answer. Remember, ADLs are things you do for yourself every day. Vital signs are not an ADL. You guys don't take your vital signs every day, right? That's what that D is for, daily living. You go to the bathroom every day. You eat every day. You usually get dressed every day. You should. You rest every day. So remember that D is important. Daily activities, routine. Good? Make sense? Okay. That's a good question. I probably should use that one tomorrow. All right. I still have to write my questions this afternoon for tomorrow's. Yeah. So I make sure, because there's an actual published test outline. They tell us what topics are on the test. And I know how to write the questions based on the formula that they use to actually write the questions. So I actually write all of our questions. I don't use anybody else's. So what you're getting from me are actual, true questions that are based on the state exam. Now, that's kind of important for you, because if you've ever taken a practice test online for CNA, if you've ever gone to any of the websites that have practice tests, they have questions on there that are not in the scope of practice of CNAs. Why? I can tell you why. It's not a nice answer, though. Those websites make money off of ads, right? Nobody's doing this for free. It costs time to develop these websites. We also have to pay for server space. So we rely on ads, and I do too. There's no difference there. We rely on ads. Now, I could improve my ad revenue if I could get you to stay on the page longer, right? Because then it's going to show you more ads. So what's a really good way of getting you to stay on the page longer? Make you think that you're not ready for the state exam. So then you take more practice tests and you're on the page longer, right? So if I can trick you by giving you really hard questions that you have no way of answering, you will think, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for the test. I don't know the information I need to know. And you'll start to panic, which will make you take more tests. Isn't that sneaky? Isn't that sneaky? Yeah. Now, we have a practice test on our website. You also have one in your white book on page 142 that we'll be talking about later today. And I'm going to put more practice tests on the website because I'm getting a lot of feedback that people want more tests. So I am in the process of working on that. We also have the game show and all of that. And yes, I would like you to stay on my site, so that you see ads and hopefully click on one that makes sense to you, right? So that my server gets paid for it. That's a good thing. Helps keep me able to produce content for you. But I am not going to be sneaky about it. I'm just going to give you a lot of really good content, and hope you find value in that. And you're watching the videos and doing the practice tests. I'm going to keep you there with good content, not with making you doubt yourself. My goal is to get you to take the test. Remember slide 1? We only have one more class. Have you registered for the test? Take the test. Don't be so afraid of the test that you don't test. That's not what I'm here for. I want you to reach your goals. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So any questions on range of motion? Isn't that crazy? You know? Yeah, it's kind of, but that's why. So be careful about the if you're taking, take other practice tests. I'm not saying you can't, but if there's a question there and you're thinking, oh, I don't know, is that even something we do? If I didn't teach it to you, it's not something that you do. Okay. I've made sure that you're well prepared. All right. So one of the things that I want to talk about before we move on to this next skill, this is a question that comes up about this point in the program because you've started to practice now. And some of you are thinking, because you're so concentrated on your steps when you're practicing, what supplies do I need? Did I do this right? What's my next step? What did I forget? Right? So you're really concentrating on you and your performance. So a question that comes up all the time is, do I really have to talk to the patient as much as you talk? You know, do I have to say everything you say? And the answer to that is yes and no. So no, it's not tested that you're following a script, that you're actually saying every word I say. That's not tested. You know, your conversation with your patients is tested to the extent of they need to know what you're doing with their body. So if you forget to say a few things, it's okay. But imagine how awkward it would be if you are the patient for a second. You're laying in a bed in a strange place surrounded by strange people, and you've got all of these strangers coming in and putting their hands on you. If you don't know what they're doing, why they're taking your sheet off, remember, you're not dressed for company. You are vulnerable. So if you have a strange person coming in the room and they're taking your sheet off of you and grabbing your body, you may suspect that they are not there for legitimate reasons. And we have to remember that that is our patient's reality. They don't know you. Sure, you know the tasks that you need to do, but they don't know you. And they don't know the tasks you're about to do. So the more information that you give patients, the more cooperative they'll become. So the answer to that, do I have to talk it out, is yeah, you really should. Like when I'm doing range of motion on the hip, knee, and ankle, my patient has no idea what I'm about to do with them. All they know is I'm going to do some exercises, but they don't know what's coming. Because they're unsure, they may start to stiffen up or get a little resistant because they don't know what's happening. But if I tell them, okay, I'm going to do flexion extension now, that doesn't help them a bit. They don't know what flexion extension is. All they're thinking is this going to hurt? But if I say something like, I'm going to bend your knee to your chest, like you're walking upstairs, they would go, oh yeah, I know how to do that. That doesn't hurt. That's okay. Right? And they'll relax and become more cooperative. If you have an uncooperative patient, the first thing you should check is your approach. Don't automatically assume that they are the problem. Make sense? Okay. All right. So let's move on to catheter care. This is on page 114 of your skills book. Our care plan for this particular skill is to provide catheter care with soap and water to a female resident with an indwelling urinary catheter. Clean the catheter tubing and perineal area only. This is pericare with an extra step. Okay. We're going to clean the perineal area and the catheter tubing. If you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see this is going to be done on a mannequin. Should take somebody with your level of experience 15 minutes or less to do. If you remember peri-care, now when we learned peri-care on Wednesday, we changed the chucks. We washed the peri area using the leaves method, 5 strokes. We wash, rinse, and dry. We wash the back side of the patient and we change that pad again. That's pretty much peri-care. Change the pad, wash the front, wash the back, change the pad. That's pretty much peri-care, right? Of course, you have to know the leaves method. You have to know to wipe only in one direction, right? We covered all of that, but essentially it really kind of boils down to these 4 steps. Now, catheter care, if that's peri-care, catheter care is even easier. We're going to put a chucks under the patient. We're going to clean the front, wash, rinse, dry using the leaves method. We are not cleaning the backside, and we're not going to leave them on a chucks at the end. So essentially, it's even easier. Instead of doing this, though, we're going to clean the tubing that's exiting the body. Okay. So peri-care, these 4 steps, catheter care, the first 2, and the tubing. It doesn't matter which you do first. You can do the peri area first and then the tubing. You can do the tubing first and then the peri area. Nobody cares. Knock yourself out however you want to do this. But in order to understand this, we kind of have to learn a little bit about catheters, because I found over my time doing this that most students are scared to death of these things. And I think that if you understand what it is, and more importantly, what it isn't, you can overcome your own fear, and this becomes an easier skill to work with. Okay. So I'm going to explain to you about catheters. Get my little bag of tricks here. Okay. Where's my syringe? Hold on a second, guys. I got to find my syringe. All right. I'll have to go over that in a little bit, but I got to find a syringe to show you. But so a catheter is nothing more than a flexible straw. That's it. That's all it is. It is a flexible straw. If it's temporary, there's no balloon. If it has to stay in, there's a balloon, because a balloon is the doorstop that keeps it in place. Okay. So there's 2 different types of main types of catheters. This is a straight cath, no balloon. So it literally goes in, drains the bladder, comes right out. Okay. This is a catheter with a balloon. And that's why I need the syringe, is because you blow this balloon up with water. So if you notice, this one only has 1 hole at the bottom, right? Because it goes in, it drains the bladder, it comes right back out. This has 2 holes at the bottom. One, inflate, this one with the little color thing on it, inflates the balloon and deflates the balloon. This one, the bigger one, allows the urine to come out. That's it. They are just straws. That's it. Okay. All right. So catheters are going to be attached two bags. So we end up with this whole big system. And I want to explain to you all the different parts of this system because it looks a little complex when you first look at it, but it's actually very, very easy, very simple. We have a bag that collects urine. That bag is going to have markings on it. We don't use these to measure. This is just for an eyeball. This is not how we measure. The bag also has a port that allows us to empty the urine out. The bag will have tubing connected to it as part of the system. And that tubing is going to have a little port on the end of it that would plug in to here, the catheter. So we have the bag and tubing and the catheter. This right here, this connection is snug because we don't want it to separate. Then you have the catheter itself. This is the little port that allows us to inflate the balloon with a syringe. Then you have the catheter itself. Here's the balloon inflated. And at the top of the catheter is a little hole. You can see that here that allows the urine to go down the catheter. So although this looks pretty complex, there's not much to it. It's a bag with a tubing that connects to a catheter inside the body. So what do we use this for? What do we need this for? Well, there's two pieces here for a specific reason. The catheter itself is put in place for up to 30 days. We don't want to be putting something in and taking it out continuously because every time you put it in, you risk introducing bacteria. So a catheter goes in, stays in for up to 30 days. Now, if we just need a urine sample or to drain the bladder, we're just going to use this one and we put it in and we take it right back out. If we're going to leave it in, it would be this one with the balloon and we can leave it in up to 30 days. But the bag itself, that has to be changed a little more often. The bag is usually changed weekly, sometimes even more often than that. Okay. So we have to have two pieces here. If the catheter can stay in up to 30 days, you have to have a way of changing out that bag more frequently. So remember that this hole on the catheter, this hole is going to connect to the port on the tubing of the bag, right? Two pieces. CNAs have to be trained to change that bag. It's not part of your original training. And that's because you have to be trained on that patient specific supplies. Okay. There's only 3 places in the system that we can introduce bacteria. We're going to talk about that in just a minute and why that's important. But as a CNA, know that the catheter and the bag are 2 separate pieces, and you have to be trained, patient-specific training, to change the bag out because of infection control. Okay. So CNAs are responsible for cleaning the catheter and the skin around the catheter, emptying the bag, measuring that urine, and documenting. That's what we are responsible for as CNAs. Changing the bag out, we can do with additional training. Okay? Good? This is why. You guys remember this? Chain of infection? Okay. Catheters pose a very high risk of infection. Catheters kill about 2,500 people a year. It's not the catheters that kill them. It's a catheter-acquired infection, or something we called a CAUTI. You'll hear that term. You don't need to know it for the test, but you will hear that term, CAUTI, catheter-acquired urinary tract infection. But CAUTIs kill a significant amount of people every year. Well, why? Remember that we don't put catheters in healthy people. Somebody has a medical problem and we need to control their flow of urine. So maybe they're giving birth And when you push baby out, you push everything out. We don't want you peeing on baby, right? So catheter might be indicated, especially if you have an epidural because you can't get up and walk to the bathroom, right? So catheter might be indicated. Make sense? If our patient is bedbound and has a huge bed sore on their coccyx or tailbone, and they're incontinent, that urine, remember urine is acidic, acidic eats skin. We already have an open wound, right? We don't want those two things to meet. So that patient may need a catheter to control the flow of urine. Starting to see, right? So our patients with catheters have something else going on in their life. Their immune system already busy. If we introduce a catheter acquired urinary tract infection, I'm going to tell you why they're way more dangerous than just a plain old UTI in a minute. But if we allow that to happen, their immune system may not be able to fight it off. So we don't use catheters if we don't need catheters. If the urine has a way of coming out all by itself, we're going to let it come out all by itself. If they're incontinent, they don't need a catheter. Urine's coming out. Great job. If they're incontinent with a huge bed sore, now we may need a catheter just to help protect the integrity of that skin around the wound. You guys understand? Okay. So catheters are not used for convenience. Now it used to be. Man, in the 70s, if you went to the ER, I mean, for a splinter, if you had a splinter and you went to the ER, you got an IV and a catheter. I mean, it was just like routine. Everybody that walked in, we're putting tubes everywhere. Well, we found out that's really not best practice. Let's not do that. So we're very, very cautious about our use of catheters because they have a very high rate of infection. And I'll explain to you why that's important. But in order to understand it, we have to do a brief review because you had a weekend in between the last class and this one. So let's review really quickly, okay? In our body, we have 2 kidneys. Those kidneys filter blood how often? 24/7, never takes a break. That waste product comes out as urine, drip, 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 down tubes called ureters, and they collect in the bladder, right? We all remember this. The bottom of the bladder has a little valve that keeps the urine in the bladder until you go to the bathroom. Valve opens, urine comes out, valve closes, you're all set to go. Next round. Make sense? Okay. When we have a catheter, that system's still the same. Kidneys still filter blood, still produce urine, drip, drip, drip down into the bladder, still works. What we have done is put a flexible straw in there to hold that valve open. That's all we're doing. That's it. The catheter is not mystical and magical and medical and scary. All it is a flexible straw that holds that valve open. We've made our patient incontinent. Remember, incontinent, the valve doesn't work. Catheter, valve doesn't work because we're holding it open. We're making our patient incontinent. Well, that can't be good, right? We don't want an incontinent patient. So if we're holding that valve open, then we have to have a way of the urine getting out, right? That we're controlling. And that's why we have these little holes at the top of the catheter that allows the urine in the bladder to go down those holes, down the catheter, into the bag for collection. That's all we're doing here. Okay, good? Make sense? Okay, so I'm going to pass around. This is your straight cath, temporary, no balloon. This is your indwelling catheter, stays in up to 30 days, has a balloon. And I'll inflate it if I can find a syringe in a minute. I'll show you how that part works. But you guys can take a look at that and pass it around. What's that?
They do have a tendency, even as a balloon, to come out.
We're going to talk about that. So here's a balloon. Now there's different sizes of catheters. There's different sizes of balloons. And it's not a one size fits all thing, right? And this is measured in a very weird way. They measure it using a measurement scale called the French scale. So you'll have a 19 French catheter or a 16 French catheter. And when I first got into healthcare, I'm like, who's this French guy? And why is he making up all these numbers? It doesn't make any sense. So 16 is pretty standard for adult, between 16 and 19, pretty standard for adults. Pediatric, the higher the number, the smaller the catheter, by the way. So if you look at the bottom of that yellow catheter on the little orange thing, this one's green. They are color coded. But if you look down there, it'll actually tell you the size of the catheter. This is a 14 French. And we're going to inflate it with 5 to 10 mLs of water.
Okay. Different side. I had a client that had a cat.
Yeah, it's a little balloon. And I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The higher the number, the bigger the catheter. Sorry about that. The higher the number, the bigger the catheter on urinary. It's opposite when you're talking about IVs. So yeah, this is why nursing school is long. All right, so we insert the the nurse inserts the catheter when it's deflated. Once we get it in place, we put the water in and the balloon inflates and it sits right there at the bottom of the bladder and just folds it in place. You do not insert this catheter with that balloon inflated. You'd never be able to get in. So it's small, the same diameter as the catheter. It gets inserted and then the balloon gets inflated. Guys, the bladder is a hollow organ. You can't feel that bladder or that balloon in the bladder. That doesn't cause pain. Your bladder is hollow. It's designed to hold stuff, right? You have urine in it right now. It's not causing you pain. So that's not where pain comes from. A lot of people think catheters hurt, and catheters should not hurt. If your patient says a catheter hurts, something went terribly wrong. The nurse needs to know. But remember that when we put the catheter in, the whole point is to hold that valve open, right? We're making the patient incontinent. If this tube does not fit snugly in that urethra, urine is going to come out around the tube. Make sense? So like if you're looking at this tube, that tube is way too small for this urethra. I'm going to get leakage because urine can move around that tube, right? So I want a tube that's just barely going to fit inside that urethra. Barely. Make sense? Okay, that keeps urine from leaking around it. Well, have you ever put an earring in that's just a little too big for your ear piercing? It's uncomfortable, right? It's a little irritating. It doesn't quite fit right? So that's what this feels like. You're feeling the discomfort of this tube pressing against your urethra because it's got to be a snug fit. Uncomfortable, that goes away. Your body gets used to that. 10 to 12 hours. Body gets used to that. Okay. But pain is different. Have you ever had a Charlie horse in your leg? How bad does that hurt? Yeah, like 12 on a scale of 10, right? Okay, there are some people, like 1% of the population, less than 1% of the population, some people, when we put a catheter in, their bladder goes, nope, you don't belong. And it spasms. Bladder spasm is a Charlie horse of the bladder. So pain scale, 12. This is your patient that hits call line, goes, ow, 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 it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, help. Do not go to break. Do not go to lunch. Do not tell the nurse at the end of the shift. You need to go get the nurse right now. Because when I say this hurts, I mean it hurts. And your patient's not going to be able to think of anything other than this pain. Now, the nurse has a few tricks that they can use for this. But my first question is, does this urine have any other way of getting out of the body? Can I get rid of this catheter? That's my number one goal, is to get rid of the catheter. If I can't, if the patient has to have the catheter, there's no other way the urine's getting out, and I've got to deal with this, I can't leave my patient in pain like that. So there is a medication that we can give that puts the bladder to sleep. And that's what we're going to do, is put the bladder completely to sleep. But every medication has a risk. For some people, when we give this medication to put the bladder to sleep because of bladder spasms, the bladder will never wake up again. Ever. And that means the patient would have to have a catheter for the rest of their life. So risk reward, right? Doesn't happen to everybody. So a very small percentage of people get bladder spasms, and a very small percentage of those people will react negatively to that medication. But if you're that person, would it make you feel any better that it's rare? No. So we have to be aware of all of this. And your job in that whole scenario is to recognize the patient is having pain and report it right away so we can figure this out. Good? Make sense? Okay. That back. Okay, this time I'm going to pass these catheters out again, or this catheter out again. And this time I'm going to pass it out with the bag. Okay, this is the urinary drainage bag. This is a bedside bag. We're going to talk about bags in detail in a minute, but this is a bedside bag. And down here is the port. It has a cover to keep it clean until we use it. So as a CNA, you can be trained to insert this port into this hole of the catheter, but it takes a little bit of effort, and we don't want to introduce bacteria. So that's why you have to be trained to do it. Okay, so you can see, I want you to take it apart and put it back together and see how that system works. Okay, so this is your opportunity to play with it when it's not going to kill your patients.
Been there, done that.
So I know there's trainings in the back of the book that you say like are better to have depending on where you want to work and things like that. Trainings like this. Are those trainings that you get wherever you're working?
Most of the time, yeah, most of the time. Now there are some that you can get externally, right, on your own. But I actually talked about this 2 weeks ago in my live weekly on Thursdays. So 2 weeks ago, I actually talked about this. A lot of people, and I don't know why this happens, but a lot of people, when they become a CNA, they look around for other certifications they can get. And I think they think it makes them more attractive, you know, for employment. Guys, you are so attractive for employment. I mean, you're all tens. Just having your CNA is what they're looking for. But a lot of people will go out and they'll get their EKG, they'll go get phlebotomy, they'll get their medication administration, or assistance with medication administration. They'll get all of these different certifications that you may not need in your particular facility. And you have to renew all of them. And if you aren't working in them, you can't renew them. So here's an example. You think, okay, I really want to learn phlebotomy. I think it would be a good addition to my CNA. You go to a phlebotomy class, you pay, I don't know, the one here in town is like $12,000 or something, some ridiculous amount of money, stupid amount of money. It's anyway, I digress. Anyway, you go get your phlebotomy. You go to work as a CNA because you can't find any phlebotomy jobs, which they didn't tell you when you signed up for this class, right? You go work as a CNA, and in 2 years, you have to renew your phlebotomy. But if you didn't work as a phlebotomist, you can't renew your phlebotomy certification. So you just spent all of that money for nothing. So be careful about it, right? If you go to work in the hospital on a telemetry floor, telemetry is where they put all the sticky pads over your heart and somebody's sitting there watching the monitor to see if it's going to do something funky that we can play with, So you go to work on a telemetry floor and they say, hey, you need to learn how to read all these squiggly lines, because the more eyes we have on these monitors, the quicker we're going to pick up a problem, right? So you need to go learn how to read these squiggly lines. And you say, okay, where do I do that? Well, we have a class this Saturday right here at the hospital. Here, sign up, go take the class. So most of the time, additional certifications will be employer provided, and it will be based on your job requirement. Now, the one exception to that is medication assistance, which is a 6-hour medication assistance course. You can take that on your own. But if you're going to go to work at the hospital, it won't apply. You'll never use it. The only place that you can really use it is home care and assisted living. Now, there's a brand new, I mean, this just happened last month. The state legislature is now allowing CNAs with 1 year of experience or more to take a 40-hour medication administration class to be able to administer medications in nursing homes. That's not you yet. But you wouldn't want to take that class if you're working in a walk-in clinic, because where is it going to apply to? Nursing homes. So you have to look at, where am I working? What additional skills do I need for this position? Or where do I want to work? What additional skills do I need for that position? And be selective about it. Does that make sense? Those of you who really want to be phlebotomists, go to work at the blood bank. They'll train you for free. They'll train you. They do on-the-job training.
Just made me rethink everything.
So yeah, I just talked about that 2 weeks ago, my Thursday. Remember that you're going to need to be a CNA, a certified, for at least a year before you'll be eligible to take that class. Yeah. Now the 4 or the 6 hour you can take, for assisted living and home care, and that's fine. But that certification will only work in those 2 settings. And in the hospital, you're not giving meds. That's always going to be the nurse. So if your end goal is to work at a nursing home, so let me back up. So now you guys are thinking, okay, well, I don't know where I want to work. Go take my personality quiz, right? So that should be your start. Go take the quiz, figure out where your personality is best suited to work, and then look at the additional certifications you would need for that setting.
I did, but it never gave me anything. See, I have issues getting emails because I did it and it didn't give me anything.
Yeah, well, it also should have, when you submit it, it'll also show up right there on the screen, your results. It will email it to you, but it'll show up on the screen too.
I guess I should do it again.
Yeah, maybe you didn't hit submit. I don't know. Do you have a pop-up blocker on?
Could be.
Yeah, if you have a pop-up blocker on, that may affect it as well.
That could be the issue.
Yeah, because it's going to ask you for your email address to send you the results, and that comes up as a pop-up.
I'll have to check into that.
Yeah, that could be. So your first step, take the workplace personality quiz. And guys, all this is free. It's all free. So take the workplace personality quiz. It's going to tell you where you're most likely to thrive, and then look at what certifications you would need to match up with that. Okay, good. Questions? I don't know how I got on this subject. Sorry. Okay. All right. So that's what it was. If you have to change the bag, it would be employer, the nurse for that patient is going to show you how to do it on that patient, because there's different types of bags, there's different types of catheters, there's different type of connectors, and you need to be trained on that specific one. Okay. All right. So because urine flows freely out of the bladder now, because we're holding that valve open, we have to connect it to some sort of a collection device, right? A bag of some sort. You don't just want to put a catheter in and then just let them pee everywhere. That doesn't help, right? We have to collect that urine in a bag. And there are different types of bags. We're going to go over that shortly. Okay. But here's the problem with the bags. Hi. So here's the problem with this whole system, right? Where is this end of the catheter? In the bladder. The bladder is warm. The bladder is dark, right? We don't have LED lights in there. And the bladder is definitely moist, right? So the ideal breeding environment for pathogens is right here. Now, on top of that, we're going to learn that the bladder has 2 additional bonus attractions for bacteria. So this whole system is closed, right? One hole is here, and there's no more openings throughout this whole system until we get to here, the drainage point. So there's only 2 areas that bacteria can enter this system. One of them is inside the patient. The other is under our control, the drainage point. Now there is a third, and that's that connection between the catheter and the bag. And that's why you have to be trained to change out the bags. Because when I pass that around and you try to put it together, did you notice it's kind of hard, right? So you end up touching that port to all kinds of stuff. And if we touch that port to all kinds of stuff, we can introduce bacteria into the system. Make sense? Okay. So if we aren't careful and when we're draining this bag, we allow that port to touch stuff and bacteria gets into this bag, the bag is clear. So it's not dark, but the urine is still warm. And, so we have light and it is moist. So we have warm and moist. We just don't have dark. But bacteria, they're still going to be digging it. Okay, you get bacteria in this bag and they're not going to be unhappy. Now, the real problem here is that urine has 2 additional things. It has enzymes and proteins. And these enzymes are make it easier for the bacteria to procreate. And the proteins are a food source. So open bar and all you can eat buffet. Okay. So bacteria gets into the bag, it's bad news because bacteria don't need little boy bacteria and little girl bacteria to make baby bacteria. They need the right conditions and they zip themselves in half. And now we have 2. Those 2 become 4. Those 4 become 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on. See how that can really grow quickly, right? So when those bacteria in the bag start to multiply, they run out of room. And luckily for them, there's a tunnel. So they start to climb. And now they're getting fresher food. So they really start to ramp up and they climb. And then when they get to here, now we've blocked out light. So we have every condition possible that they need. So by the time that they get up here, they multiply, 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 multiply. And when they jump out through the hole at the top of the bladder or at the top of the catheter into the bladder, it's not 1 or 2 bacteria. It's 1 or 2 trillion bacteria. So we go from I'm fine, no infection, to overwhelming infection that quick. This is why, remember I said that catheter acquired UTIs are way more dangerous than regular UTIs. It's because in a regular UTI, your body systems are trying to reduce the amount of pathogens as they're trying to increase their number, right? So it's evenly matched. This, our body defenders are not involved in. They hid out in that tube. They were able to multiply unimpeded. So when they jump out into the bladder, it's an overwhelming infection. And remember, our patients are already fighting something else. They probably aren't going to be able to overcome that. Do you guys see why catheters are so dangerous for our patients and why infection control has to be top of mind when we're working with catheters? Does that make sense? Everybody with me? So the 3 points of entry that bacteria can enter the system is the port that we are going to use for emptying, the connection between the catheter and the bag, and the tip of the catheter that's inside the patient. Now, we're not going to work with this. The nurses do this. The nurses insert catheters. This isn't us. This could be us with additional training. But the reason you have to have additional training is look how close that is to the body, right? So we're getting those, if we allow this to be contaminated, we're getting it way closer to the body than down here. So this is the one that we are most concerned about as CNAs because we have to empty this bag. So when we're emptying the bag, we want to make sure that port doesn't touch anything, nothing. Not the cup, not the bed, not your gloves, not the chucks, nothing. Keep that port clean. Now, we used to wipe it off with alcohol a long time ago. But as they do studies, they realize that, you know, what we thought was a good idea wasn't really a good idea after all. That's what studies are all about. So what they found out is this port, this thing right here, oops, this port is made out of a plastic-like substance. When we wipe it off with alcohol, alcohol is a drying agent. So it dries that material out and micro cracks form. Well, cracks are warm, dark, moist places that allow bacteria to thrive. So we realized that that actually, even though we thought it was a good idea, turned out to be not so good idea. So they don't recommend that anymore. They just recommend that we don't let that port touch anything. Good. So when I take this out of its little house to empty it, I'm going to take it out without letting it touch anything. I'm going to slide this valve to the side to open the port. But if you notice, I'm not touching down here. Okay. Everything is going to be done from this end, not that end. So I'm going to slide that T-valve to the side. And when I do that, it opens the port. So now the urine can come out. So I'm going to empty this into a cup, a measuring cup. And then before I put it away, I'm going to close that valve. And when I go to put it back in its house, I don't let it touch anything. You don't want to do this. Okay. That's what they're looking for. Good. All right, so let's talk about catheter safety. Catheters need to be positioned on a non-moving part of the bed. That's important because if you put it on a moving part of the bed, you put the legs up, that catheter could get pulled out of the patient. So non-moving part of the bed, but it also needs to be, the bottom of the bag needs to be elevated off the floor. You don't want that bag to touch the floor. Remember, pathogens, okay? So you want the bag off the floor, non-moving part of the bed. You never want to lift the bag above the level of the patient's hips. So for me, urine should be a one-way trip. I do not want recycled urine back in my body. That's pretty high on my gross meter. But when you lift the bag up, that's what's going to happen. All the urine that's in the tube is going to go woo right back up into the patient, along with any bacteria that might be hanging out, like a water slide. Woo! Now, I have seen lots of CNAs walking patients up and down a hallway of a hospital with the urine bag hung on one of the handhelds of the IV pole. above the level of the hips. That's just gross. Right? So we never allow that urine bag to go above the level of the hips. Very important. You're going to carry it. Carry it. Oh, yeah. I saw one that hung it at the top of an IV pole. Yeah. And the thing was, it stretched the catheter and the tubing so much because there wasn't enough slack for that. So what caught my attention, I wasn't going to talk about it. What caught my attention with this one wasn't the fact that there was, I really wasn't even looking at the pole. It was the way the patient was walking. Just, I mean, like C-3PO from Star Wars, right? It was bizarre. I'm like, what is wrong with that patient? What's going on? Well, the catheter tubing was so tight because the bag was up here that the patient's like trying to elevate their bottom up to get some slack. And the CNA didn't like, I just, no. Take that down. Take it down.
How do you think it's gonna get up there?
That's
Right,
not
like,
true.
it's gonna-
That poor
Right.
man.
Like, no, oh, treat it like a saline bed.
Right.
Okay.
Kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Especially knowing this now, it's like, okay.
Yeah. All right. Sometimes our confused patients will pull at catheters. Absolutely. It's a known fact. It doesn't belong, right? It doesn't hurt, but it's irritating because the tube has to be big enough to fit snugly, right? It doesn't belong. So your confused patients will often pull at this. If you notice a patient pulling at their catheter, you need to let the nurse know right away. Ounce of prevention really is worth a pound of cure. If I know I've got a patient who's pulling on a catheter and I have a way of intervening before they pull it out, that's a good day. If I have to wait and do damage control after they pull it out, that's a bad day for everybody. Okay, so if you notice the patient is really struggling with this catheter thing, let the nurse know. Don't just ignore it. Don't just think to yourself, oh yeah, that's normal. People pull at catheters all the time. It's not normal. It's not. And this patient will pull it out. They will. But unfortunately, CNAs pull out way more catheters than patients do. Way more. Now, let me show you how. If that tubing is coiled near the floor, when you're walking by it, when you're transferring a patient into a wheelchair, when you're helping the patient out of bed, when you're making a bed, if that tubing is coiled near the floor, there's a very high likelihood that your feet will get tangled in that. And as you're trying to untangle yourself, you will pull that catheter out. You also will pull catheters out by moving a patient with a catheter bag still attached to the bed. And that happens a lot, unfortunately. When you're turning a patient over in bed, if there's not enough slack there, that balloon will not keep that catheter in the bladder. It'll pop right out. Absolutely. Remember, that balloon is just filled with water. It's pliable. So you put enough pressure on that tube and that balloon is not going to keep it in place. I mean, it'll do a good job as long as there's not a lot of pressure, but you pull on it hard enough and that thing will come out. Absolutely. No doubt about it. And unfortunately, CNAs, they dislodge way more catheters than patients do. This is probably the number one thing that you'll see with CNAs. They'll start to walk the patient and forget that the urine bag is on the bed. And the catheter will come out. It will. And then your patient's going to be yelling at you because it hurts. Guys, you got a balloon this big going through a tube that big. You're going to get tissue tearing. You're going to get a little bleeding. Now, can you imagine what that's going to feel like when you pee through it? It's horrible. Yeah, your patient's gonna be squawking at you for sure. Yeah, that's horrible. It's not something that's gonna kill them, right? You can recover from that, but I wouldn't want to go through it. It's like peeing razor blades. So if a catheter does come out, don't hide it. See, a lot of people hide it until the end of shift. Next shift comes on and they find a catheter laying in the bed. Yeah, don't hide it, guys. And, because they don't want to do the paperwork. They don't want the nurse to yell at. There's a million reasons, or they're just lazy. Yeah, don't hide it. Yeah. And that's exactly it. That's exactly where we're going with this. Anytime you have injury, you always have swelling. The two go hand in hand. This is probably not a place you want swelling, right? So I only have, as a nurse, I only have about 45 minutes to make a decision. So my first question is, does the patient need the catheter? Is it essential? Can the pee come out any other way? If the answer, and not injure the patient, if the answer is the pee can come out some other way, I'm probably not going to put a catheter back in, because if one came out, the next one will probably come out too, right? So if I don't absolutely positively have to have the catheter, we're probably just going to let the patient be. But if I absolutely positively have to have that catheter, I have to get another one inserted before the swelling sets in. Because once that swelling sets in, I'm out of options. I am completely out of options. Does that make sense? So let me give you an example. But a patient with bladder cancer had a tumor constricting the urethra, right? Urine cannot come out naturally. So we had a catheter going in to hold that urethra open, right? Because the catheter is somewhat rigid. Catheter is in, holding the urethra open, urine can come out, patient's happy, good, right? CNA accidentally pulls the catheter out. It happens, but didn't tell anybody. Patient cannot pee normally. There is an obstruction in place. Well, they found out because the patient got distended, and the nurse started checking into it to figure out what's going on, realized the catheter was out. Well, when you are unable to pee for a long time and your bladder fills and fills and fills, I mean, imagine how that feels. You start doing the pee dance, right? Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. Maybe cross and uncross your legs, right? Gotta go. But what if you couldn't go? What if just more urine kept going into the bladder? More urine, more urine, more urine. And it has nowhere to go, right? So swelling had set in by that point, and the nurse could not get, because remember, we've already got an obstruction. Nurse can't get a catheter in. So now this patient is rushed to surgery, and we had to actually go in through the abdominal cavity into, it's a surgical procedure. It's called a suprapubic catheter, where we actually insert a catheter from the outside of the body through the abdominal wall into the bladder. Yeah, all because if the CNA had just told the nurse, hey, catheter came out, we probably could have avoided that. So what we do matters. It matters big, right? So if a catheter does come out, make sure you notify the nurse right away. Don't wait, because we don't have a whole lot of time. But don't just throw that catheter bag away, because there is an issue here. If the catheter comes out and the balloon is intact, all pieces are present and accounted for, that's okay. I can work with that. But if the catheter comes back, you guys take a look at this, and the balloon is popped, and there's a piece missing. You see how there's a piece missing? That is not something that I can deal with. That requires surgical intervention. We can't leave a piece of balloon in the patient. The patient will reject it. So it doesn't belong in their body. So we actually have to put a scope up there with a little mini grabber thing and try to go fishing. Now, the only way for me as the nurse to know whether I've got just a regular run of the mill catheter that came out or we get to go fishing, the only way for me to know the difference is for me to look at the catheter. If you've thrown it away, if you've put it in soiled utility and I can't tell it from the other catheters in there, what do I do? Right? You've removed my options here. So the best practice here, if a catheter comes out, put the catheter and the drainage bag together, this whole system in an empty trash bag in the bathroom, and then go find me and let me know that the catheter came out. It's in a bag in the bathroom for you to take a look at. You can also put it in an empty wash basin, but just don't put it on the floor. Remember, nothing goes on the floor. Remember that? Nothing goes on the floor. So bag is ideal because every trash can has empty bags in the bottom of it. So just grab an empty bag, put the catheter bag in the empty trash bag, put it in the bathroom, let a nurse know. Okay. This could be a written test question. Your patient has accidentally removed a catheter. What is your action? Okay. Save it for the nurse, notify the nurse. Good. Questions? All right, so these are what I just passed out to you. There's two different types of catheters that we've talked about so far. Remember how I said everything in healthcare has more than one name, right? So we're keeping with this trend, okay? This is an indwelling catheter, also called a Foley catheter. I guess the guy that invented it was named Foley, okay? This is a straight catheter, also called a Red Robinson because it's red. And the guy who made its name was Robinson. Okay. It's also called an intermittent cath. That's another name that you may hear, intermittent cath, because we put it in, take it out, put it in, take it out, put it in, take it out, intermittent, doesn't stay in. But we got another type of catheter that's only used for men. This is called a Texas catheter, an external catheter, or a condom catheter. So 2 names isn't enough. We need 3. And this goes on just like a condom would along the shaft of the penis. It's sticky on the inside, so it's going to stay in place. Now, remember I said that indwelling catheters can stay in up to 30 days. These are temporary, in and out, just to relieve the urine out of the bladder. These can stay on up to 3 days. So this is the port that our bag is going to connect to. This is our port that our bag is going to connect to. Same port on both. This is the port that the bag is going to connect to on a Texas catheter. Okay. That means, that bag, this part, that's pretty rigid, right? It doesn't really bend real well. So this, you have to make sure if we're using a Texas catheter on a man, you really want to make sure that their clothing is loose and baggy and can, because this thing isn't going to like bend well at all. It's coming right off of the shaft. So your patients may not feel all that comfortable with this. You want to try to increase their comfort. The other problem with these, remember I said that they can stay up to 3 days, right? And they're sticky, so they're designed to stay in place. Well, the problem is that this tip right here is what we call a reservoir tip. So the urine's going to go into that reservoir and then it'll go out the port. But that means that urine is going to kind of stay against the skin at the top of the shaft. So what do we know about adult urine? It's acidic. So you've got this acidic urine right up on that skin for a long period of time. So when these get changed out, good pericare is essential. Because remember, normal pericare we're doing every 2 hours around the clock. This is going to stay for 3 days. So the skin becomes macerated or, irritated, very common with that type of catheter. So make sure that you're aware of that. If you're using a condom catheter, good quality male pericare, essential. Good. Oh, we use them a lot. Yeah, they're used because it's not internal. So you don't have that infection risk. You have a skin issue, but you don't have that infection risk. So your dementia patients, they're used a lot. Patients with mobility issues that can't get up and go to the bathroom or can't use a urinal. So if you've got somebody who maybe is a paraplegic. Okay. We use them for all sorts of mobility issues as well, just to help. Basically, it just helps control the flow of urine, especially in patients that have limited mobility or limited cognitive awareness. So lots of reasons. The other thing this is used for, and this is absolutely horrible, horrible. This is attached to a small leg bag, which we're going to see in a minute. This becomes what they call a stadium setup. Do you know why it's called a stadium setup? Yes, absolutely. If you are a diehard sports fan and you don't want to brave the lines in the bathroom and you don't want to miss a play on the field, yeah, stadium setups. Not to me. No, I'll wait in line, thanks. No. And remember, this is a male thing, right? This is external, so it's a male thing, but yeah, no. Now, there's one other type of way of dealing with incontinence that I did not put on this slide, and it's relatively new, and it's for females. It's also external for females, and it's called the Pure Wick system, and it kind of looks, for lack of a better term, okay, it kind of looks like an elongated tampon. Okay, kind of like a banana shaped tampon. And it's attached to suction. So it's put in place externally. And as for our incontinent female patients in bed, and as the urine leaks from the bladder, because remember, no valve integrity, the urine leaks from the bladder, this gentle suction pulls that urine away from the skin and collects it in a device. Okay. So we do have an external option for women, but it's only when they're in bed because you can't really, it's a big suction machine. You can't really like drag it around. Okay. Good. Understand different types of catheters. Did this help you guys understand catheters a little bit more? Okay. So when we're cleaning the catheter, remember, we have to do pericare, the front part of pericare, and clean the catheter tubing. When we're cleaning that catheter, we want to hold it where it exits the body and wipe away from the body. Remember, everything we do is away from the urethra. So, but you don't want it to tug on the inside. So where's my catheter? I really wish I had a syringe to show you this. Okay. So we're going to pretend that this balloon is blown up a little bit more, but that's going to kind of keep the catheter in place, right? That balloon. So this is my bladder. This is the valve or the entrance to the urethra. I can tug on this quite a bit and it's going to stay in place. But if I wrap that washcloth around and I really pull on it for friction, because remember, we want to remove pathogens. So you don't want to pull, but if I put pressure on that, it's going to come right out. So what we want to do is when that's in the bladder, we want to hold it here as we wrap the washcloth and pull. So we're holding it so that this area remains stationary as we're wiping along the tubing. Good. So that's a really important step. Otherwise, you'll end up pulling out the catheter. All right, so our just to review here, our care plan tells us to provide catheter care with soap and water to a female resident with an indwelling urinary catheter, clean the catheter tubing and perineal area only. This is a mannequin skill. So our checkpoints, the things that we're going to be graded on here is that we're going to protect the sheet with a chuck. So they're not going to be laying on one like they were with peri-care. Remember, the whole reason for having that pad under them is urine is coming out. We got to have a way of collecting it. This patient has a catheter. There is no urine. And if you put a patient on a pad that doesn't need one, that pad is plastic lined. It's going to hold in body heat. So we end up with warm, dark, moist from sweat. Okay. So no pad if we don't need it. So the patient won't start out on a pad. We're going to put one there to protect the sheets as we clean. We're going to use leaves method, 1 leaf per stroke for both the peri area and the catheter. We're going to always clean from front to back, wash, rinse, dry. We're never moving back up. We're going to hold the catheter at the meatus. The meatus is a term that means body opening. Okay. So we're going to hold the catheter at the meatus when cleaning. We'll clean the catheter 3 to 4 inches out. We'll remove that chucks. And we want to check the bag and tubing to make sure that everything's intact. It's on a non-moving part of the bed. Tubing's not coiled near the floor. All the stuff we talked about earlier. Good. All right. So before I show you this skill, I'm going to talk to you about drainage bags because these two skills in a clinical setting go together. Cleaning the catheter, emptying the bag. Catheters are usually cleaned. Catheter care is usually done once per shift. Emptying the bag is usually done once per shift, so we tend to do them together. Good. So I'm going to talk to you about emptying the bag because I'm going to show you these 2 videos, one right after the other, and that's going to finish up our skills for today. For the test, they're 2 separate skills, but in a clinical setting, they do tend to go together. Okay. So if you go to page 114, all right, so let me answer Patricia's question here. It says, what if the house for the valve looks cloudy? Are we allowed to clean the inside of the house that the valve stays in? So this area here. This area here, if it looks cloudy, discolored, looks like, it may have some pathogens in it. We don't clean this, we notify the nurse. Okay, so don't take it upon yourself to clean that out. Let the nurse know. Chances are I'm probably going to get a whole new bag and change it out. That's much safer than cleaning it. Okay, but go by whatever the nurse says for that particular patient. And what's that?
Our book's different. We're 117.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No, I'm just letting you know.
Oh yeah, it's right there too. I missed that. And button eyes, does the test prep work for California and the study guide you offer on your site? Yes, it does. It goes over best nursing practices that you're going to need to pass a state exam, no matter what state you're in. It's written specifically for prometric states. So all the care plans you see are based on prometric testing, which is in 14 states. California does not use prometric testing, but the principles are still the same. The scenarios may change a little, but it will definitely help you. All right, so this care plan tells us to empty the resident's urinary drainage bag into a graduate container and measure and record the urinary output in mLs or cc's. Remember, we don't use ounces. On the intake and output form, you can see the intake and output form there in the middle of the page. And if you turn to page 122, you'll see a larger version of it. 121, sorry. Okay. So you can use these practice sheets when you're practicing. I also have them over there on the clipboard too. So this is a triangular graduate container. Graduate means it has markings on it. You can use it to measure. So your measuring cups at homes are graduate containers. This one is a triangle shape. That's why it gets its name, triangular graduate container. This is not to be confused with a urine specimen cup. A urine specimen cup is a little cup you pee in, about this big, kind of looks like a plastic Dixie cup, right? Two different things. You will hear this called a urine container, but the sample ones are urine cups. Remember, we always have two names for everything. What's that? A needle? Not, it depends on what type of specimen cup you're getting, but they usually have a lid. Yeah, this won't have a lid. So on this, you'll actually see ounces on one side and cc's on the other. Which one do we use? Cc's. So we're going to empty the urine into this. We're going to measure it on a barrier, on a flat surface at eye level. And we're just going to round to the nearest line. Up, down, doesn't matter, round to the nearest line. Okay. So I'll pass this around so you guys can see. All right. So there's different types of bags. This is the one that we're working with here that I passed around today. This is a leg bag. Remember, I was talking to you about the stadium setups. This is a leg bag. It's a smaller bag, and it attaches to the inside of the thigh or the calf, so it's very discreet. People can wear this, and you won't even know that they have it. Both of these have emptying ports. So this one, it's on the bag. This one, it's at the bottom of the bag. So this is how the urine would exit the bag. Doesn't matter which type of bag we're using, we would empty that into a cup if we're measuring output, measure it and document. Okay. But you need to know that there's a couple of different types of bags. When we empty the drainage bag, we have to put the graduate container on a chucks. Remember, nothing goes on the floor without a barrier. So we put a barrier on the floor, we put the cup on the barrier, we empty the urine into the cup. Good? Questions? Okay, don't forget the barrier. If you put the cup directly on the floor, it's a huge deficiency. Don't put the urine cup directly on the floor. When we empty the drainage bag, don't let that drainage port touch anything. Remember this drainage port here? We have to use this to empty the urine into this cup. Don't let that port touch anything. Now, I've said that about 7 times so far. Do you think it's important? Yes. Because it has a huge result on the patient. So don't let that port touch anything. So to open it, and I showed you this a few minutes ago, to open it, we're going to take the port out of its house. We're going to slide the T-valve to the side, and we're going to let the urine go into the cup. It's not Maxwell House. You don't have to get good to the last drop here, okay? But you want to empty the bag as completely as you can. Don't leave a lot in there. But you don't have to stress getting every single drop out for the test. Good? Just until it, until it's reasonably empty. Now, in order to do that, notice the valve's over here. In order to do that, you may have to tip the bag up a little bit. Can that bag ever go above the patient's hips? Be careful about that. You can tip the bag, but don't hold it high if your patient's laying in bed. Okay. Once you're done emptying the bag, make sure you close that valve. If you leave the valve open, urine can come out, but what could get in? Pathogens. So when we have urine in the graduate container, it has to be on a barrier, on a flat surface, and at eye level. The checkpoint that we're getting checked off has all 3 of those on it, on the same checkpoint. So if you're measuring this and it's not on a barrier, you don't get the check mark. If you're measuring this and it's not on a flat surface, you don't get the check mark. If you're measuring this and you're doing one of these things, you're not at eye level, you don't get the check mark. All three of those things have to be satisfied to get the check mark on this. This means you got to get down there and look at eye level. When we carry a container of urine through a room, we always want it covered. So we're going to take that chucks that's on the floor, wrap it around our container, take it over to the bathroom, put it on the lid of the toilet, unwrap it, and then get down and measure at eye level. We never carry an open container of urine through a room. It has to be covered. So in this case, we'll use the chucks that's right there underneath our container to cover it. And that becomes our barrier when we're reading it. Good? Questions? This is a super short skill. Super short. If you look at the bottom of page 117, how much time?
9 minutes.
Wow. Yeah, it's not going to take you 9 minutes. I thought that one was 5. It's not going to take you 9 minutes. Documentation is going to be vital for this particular skill. We're going to document on an intake and output form. We talked about intake and output earlier in this program, but the form, the intake and output form, notice, has intake at the top and output at the bottom. Which one is urine? Oh, I hope so. I don't want it as intake. Right? So if you document here, that is a huge deficiency. You are legally stating that this patient ingested somehow urine. Make sure that you're in the right space. You're going to put the time. You don't have to use military time. You can use regular time, but if you use regular time, you have to indicate AM or PM. Type of output, we're going to write urine because that's what it is, but other things can come out of the human body. Blood, urine, feces, emesis or vomit, wound drainage, lots of things. The amount in cc's and your initials. Okay. Good. Questions? Okay, I'm going to show you these two videos back to back. Okay, I'm going to show you these two videos back to back. First, we're going to watch the catheter care video, and then we're going to watch the drainage bag video, and that's going to finish up our skills. Everything, all skills will be done after that. And then you'll have an opportunity to take a break, and the rest of the class will be practice. Good? Did I get you fast for anybody? This one's kind of tough, I know, because it's supplies you're not familiar with. You know, you probably have never seen a catheter before, or a drainage bag, or a graduate container. So we're working with some new things, but we're using old principles that we've already learned. Okay, good. Okay, YouTube world, give me a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and show these videos. And then after that, when they're practicing, I'll put the links in for you to be able to watch these videos on your own as well.
So, my name is Patti, I'm your CNA Training, how are you? Good, I need to do catheter care, is that okay? I'm going to close the curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to gather my supplies. I'll start out with a barrier that provides a clean place to put my supplies. And we're going to get 4 washcloths, a towel, a chucks, a privacy blanket, and now I'll gather my basin and soap. And a set of gloves. All right, Ms. Jones, I'll just get some water. I'll be right back. Okay, would you like to check the water temperature and make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. I'll place the washcloths in there to stay warm. And I'm gonna cover you with a privacy blanket. This is gonna help protect your privacy and keep you warm while we do this skill. And I'm gonna pull your sheet down to about your knees. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm gonna place this pad underneath you. This is gonna help keep your bed dry while we do this skill. First, I'll roll it toward me. Place it on the bed. And then I'll put my gloves on. All right, Ms. Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? Thank you. And can you roll onto your left side? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Going to be very careful, making sure that the catheter tubing rolls with the patient and doesn't get pulled on. I'm going to unroll the chucks underneath the patient's hip and have the patient come back onto their back, making sure that they don't lay on that catheter tubing. Ms. Jones, can you scoot to the middle of the bed, please? Thank you. Ms. Jones, can you scoot toward me? Thank you, and roll up onto your right side. 1, 2, 3. And now I can unroll the chucks to protect the bed. Come on back, Ms. Jones, and scoot to the middle of the bed. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to start cleaning the catheter. I'm going to roll your gown up inside the blanket. I will be exposing you, but we'll make this as brief as possible. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable. As I roll the gown in the blanket, I want to make sure that I don't grab the catheter, that we don't cause any unnecessary pulling or stress on that catheter. And now we'll cover her thighs with a towel. This exposes only the area that we're working on. I'm going to take the first washcloth and wring it out and apply soap to 4 leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to clean your catheter. I'm going to hold the catheter where it exits the body, wrap the washcloth around, and wipe away from the body. Fold that leaf over. I'm going to hold it, wrap the washcloth around, and wipe away from the body. That's 2. We're going to do this 2 more times. Away from the body. 3. And the last one. 4. I'll set this washcloth aside. Whenever we wash, we must rinse. So I'll wring this washcloth out. And we'll use it to rinse that catheter the same way we wash. I'm gonna hold it where it exits the body, wrap the washcloth around and wipe away from the body. We'll do this 4 times. 2, 3, and 4. Set this aside. Now we'll dry the catheter. Now we're going to do peri-care. We'll take a washcloth out of the basin, bring it out really well. And we're going to soak 5 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the back side is 5. Okay, now I'm going to clean the peri area. I'm going to lift the catheter out of the way with my pinky and hold the labia open while I clean down the center with the first leaf. Always going top to bottom. And then we'll remove the washcloth and fold that leaf over. Now I'm going to clean down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that leaf over. Clean down the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that leaf over. I'm going to clean the skin fold between the groin and the leg. Fold that leaf over. And clean the other skin fold between the groin and the leg. And then set that washcloth aside. I'm going to take the final washcloth and wring it out really well. And we're going to rinse all of those areas the same way that we washed them. So I'll pull that catheter out of the way and spread the labia open, clean down the center, top to bottom. Fold that leaf over. Clean down one side of the labia. Fold that leaf over. Rinse down the other side of the labia. Fold that leaf over. We're going to rinse the skin fold. Fold that leaf over and the other skin fold. Set that aside. Now we'll dry gently by patting dry top to bottom and then removing the towel. Miss Jones, I'm going to cover you back up. I'll unroll that blanket, which will replace the gown over the patient. I'm going to make sure that the catheter and the tubing is coiled on the bed, not near the floor and not where the patient is laying on it, making sure it's not pink. Miss Jones, I'll be right back. I need to dispose of your supplies. The towels and washcloth will be placed in dirty linen. The basin is going to be cleaned the way we clean everything else. We'll return the basin to the drawer, and on the way, we'll pick up the soap. We'll open the drawer with the paper towel. Return the basin to its storage area. Now I'll dispose of my paper towels. Okay, Ms. Jones, I need to remove the tucks from under you. Can I get you to scoot toward me, please? Thank you. And can I get you to roll up on your left side? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. I'll roll this soiled chucks toward the patient and tuck it under her hip. Come on back, Ms. Jones. And scoot back to the middle, making sure the patient is not laying on that catheter tubing. Okay, Ms. Jones, can you scoot toward me again, please? Thank you. And roll up on your right side. And I'm going to remove that chucks from the back. Okay, you can scoot back to the middle. Thank you. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me just look at your catheter one last time. Make sure that the catheter tubing is coiled on the bed, that the catheter is not on the floor. Everything looks good. I'm going to remove the chucks from the table, and we're going to throw this away. And then I'll remove my gloves. We'll throw those away. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'll pull your sheet up now. And I'll remove the blanket as I do so, rolling it into a ball. We put this in dirty linen. Okay, Ms. Jones, here's your call light. If you need anything, just let me know. Are you comfortable? Can I get you anything while I'm here, like a magazine? Just gonna open your curtain and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections that need to be made, and then tell the evaluator my skill is done. Questions? Okay, you can see that this whole video takes 5 minutes for drainage. Hello, Ms. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Great. I need to empty your urinary drainage bag. Is that okay? Okay, I'm going to close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. For this skill, I'll need a barrier, which I'll place on the floor under the drainage bag. I'm going to need a set of gloves. And I'm going to need a triangular graduate container. I want to inspect the catheter tubing to make sure that it's coiled on the bed and the patient isn't lying on it and it's not pink, but also that it's not hanging near the floor where somebody might get their feet tangled up in it and trip or accidentally rip the catheter out. This catheter looks like it's in the appropriate position. We'll now remove the port from its protective sleeve on the bag. Sliding the valve to the side will open the port. We can now position this open port over the graduated container and tilt the bag slightly to the side to allow the contents to drain into the graduated container. While doing so, we want to be careful not to allow that port to touch any other surface. Once the urine bag has been emptied, we'll slide the port back to the side to close it and very carefully insert it back into its protective sleeve. We want to make sure that the bag is hanging on a non-movable part of the bed and it's not touching the floor. We can now fold the tucks over the graduate container for safe and secure transport to the patient's house. Once we're at the patient's bathroom, we're going to set the graduate container down on a barrier on a flat surface and position it so that we can read it. We need to be at our level, and we're going to round to the nearest line, either up or down. You can see that the urine in this container is nearest to the mark of 425, so the amount that we'll document is 425 milliliters or cc's. Once we've measured it on a barrier on a flat surface at eye level, we can now empty the urinary graduate container. We'll throw the barrier away, open up the toilet, and we're going to dump the contents of the graduate container into the toilet. Now we're going to rinse the graduate container. We'll deposit the rinse water into the toilet as well. Now we can clean. After dumping the rinse water into the toilet, we'll set it down, use a paper towel to pick it up, paper towel to dry the outside, paper towel to dry the inside. As hard this, and then one for the door. We're going to place the graduate container in the bottom drawer. Close the door with the paper towel. Okay, now I'll throw the paper towels away and remove my gloves. We'll throw those away as well. Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? A magazine, perhaps? You have your call back there. If you should need anything at all, please feel free to let me know. I'm going to open your curtain, wash my hands, and document my skill. Thank you. opinions, I'll document on the intake and output sheet that the evaluator gives me. I'm going to document the time of output, the type of output with the urine, the amount of output in CTs, and my initials. After documenting, I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then tell the evaluator my skill is done.
All right. Any questions on any of that? Questions? You're done with skills. Congratulations. You made it. All right, the rest of the class will be practice. I'm gonna go ahead and print off your review sheets for class 7. And hand them out. So if you're going to leave, don't leave yet. Let me get your review sheets. And I'm gonna get your linens, get some linens from that group for you as well. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. I will see you on Wednesday. We will be collecting the yellow books on Wednesday. We will have a class photo. I will give you graduation folders. We'll talk about employability. We'll talk about renewing your certification to make sure that you keep it once you work so hard to get it. Finding a job in healthcare is a little bit different than finding a job in other industries. You need to be aware of what makes our industry a little bit different than others. So lots to go over on Wednesday, but we won't be focusing on skills. It's everything else. You will have some kind of practice on Wednesday, okay? All right, let me go ahead and get your linens. I'm going to sign off. Thank you guys very much for joining us today. We're going to sign off so the students can practice. Hope to see you tomorrow for the game show, Wednesday for graduation, and Thursday for the weekly live. Till next time, happy caregiving. Bye.